Hi, I would like to welcome everyone tonight. My name is Susan Barth. I'm the founder and the president of Together in Happiness, B'Yahad Ba'Osher. And I want to welcome back those that have been to our prior webinars, and a special welcome to people that are new to our webinar. And of course, a very special welcome to our guest presenter, Elliott Katz. And before I introduce him, of course, the topic tonight is so exciting, being the strong man a woman wants, timeless wisdom for men on how to improve your relationship. I've been salivating for this webinar. I want to just share a few words about Together in Happiness for those of you that are not familiar with our work. We were founded in 2011 as a resource center promoting the awareness, the recognition, and advocacy of the critical importance of marriage education and enrichment. And we work with Jewish couples at all stages in Israel and in English-speaking countries. Whether you're engaged, newly married, or married 60 years, we're happy to work with all of you. And I want to tell you a little bit about marriage education enrichment for those that are not as familiar. It provides the skills that research has associated with healthy and happy marriages. It is not therapy. It generally uses a curriculum and a manual by a trained facilitator, and you work in groups where you don't give any personal information to anyone but your partner, however. It's not a support group. And generally, the curriculum consists of skills on communication, conflict resolution, problem solving, expectations, and to be honest, to also learn how to talk without fighting. And who can it benefit? Everyone. Why? Because it benefits society as a whole, and particularly couples that are engaged, newlyweds, expecting new parents, married couples, and also partners. We have partners from grandparents and parents to government agencies. The idea is that, however, that it's the couple that we focus on. And why? Because we put all of our resources to give them the tools in order to have the best relationship they can have, and that's giving them skills that so that they can look at their strengths, their weaknesses, how to develop strong bonds and still maintain individuality, and most of all, so that they can make those transitions that come along and have smooth, so that essentially with each, they can anticipate that with each new challenge, they've got the toolbox to be able to deal with them, and also to just stay committed to their marriage. And there have been proven research that marriage education works. But most of all, we bring in the family. Why? Because at the very beginning, it's the family of origin that has developed the person to the point where they're ready for marriage. And so that we want to make sure that that family stability is maintained for many, many reasons. We've seen what's happened through the war here. We've seen what's happened in families of divorce. And so it's our sole mission to make sure that we contribute to the couple, the family, society, and that makes us the light into the nations. And so that our nonprofit is privileged to have the participation tonight of Elliott Katz. He is a relationship coach, a speaker, an author of two very relationship advice books. Being a strong man, a woman wants, timeless wisdom for men on how to improve your relationship, and the companion book, How to Get Your Man to Wear the Pants So You Don't Have to, inspiring him to make more decisions, to take the lead, and to stop leaving it all to you. And also his goal, like that of our own nonprofit, is to share insights that can help people have loving relationships that are respectful, avoid divorce, and also children coming from broken homes. So without further ado, it is a privilege to have you with us tonight, Elliott.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. A 2015 study published by the American Sociological Association reported that 70% of divorces in the United States are initiated by the woman. Among college-educated women, it's 90%. This may lead some people to think that men don't really care about making their wives happy. and being good husbands. But what I've seen is many men who say they tried hard to make their wives happy and can't understand why their wives are so frustrated with them. So, how did I come to be interested in this? I was married for 10 years, then I got divorced. And like a lot of people, at first I blamed the other person. And then I came to the point of asking myself, what do I have to learn from all this? I don't want to go through this again. So I set out to learn, what does it mean to be a man in a relationship? Because obviously there were things I needed to learn. One of the first experiences I had that changed my thinking was during the divorce. I was invited to a men's group that was having a session with a family law lawyer. I thought, it'd be good. I thought I could learn things that would help me in the divorce. And then I thought, well, wait, I'm not going to fit in. These guys are probably domineering and controlling. That's why they're divorced. I was not like them. I was different. I was a nice guy. My wife didn't appreciate what a nice guy I was. I went to the meeting. They were all the nicest guys you could ever meet. They all couldn't understand why their wives didn't appreciate them. But when I blamed my wife, I was convinced I was right. But when these guys did it, it made me wonder about them. What was your part in this? What should you have done differently? And then I thought, maybe I should ask myself the same questions. What should I have done differently? Was there something I should have known that could have created a loving and respectful relationship instead of one leading to divorce? So I went out on a journey to learn. I started by listening to other men. The more I listened, the more I realized a lot of men are confused. We're really not sure of what our role as men are today. Then I read books on relationships. I read a mountain of books, but they didn't really say anything to me. And then I read Jewish books on marriage. They said a few things, but they didn't really answer my questions. And then I turned to the original Jewish sources, and I was blown away because what I learned coincided with what I heard women complain is lacking in men today. They don't show leadership, they don't make decisions, and they don't take responsibility. There seems to be this giant disconnect between all the messages men hear and what women really want. I came to realize that what many men today are doing, thinking that they're being good husbands, was actually damaging their relationships. I also realized I had to stop blaming the other person and stop thinking that the only solution was for them to change. I also realized I had to solve my own problems and stop thinking other people would solve them for me. In other words, I had to take full responsibility. This was empowering. I realized that I had these problems in my relationship because there were things I needed to learn. Now, that statement probably seems obvious. It seems obvious to me now, but it took me a long time to realize that. I also realized I wasn't the only one to realize this. In the past, young men used to learn from their fathers. And the earliest example is in the book of Kings that I found, where King David told his son Solomon, be strong and become a man. For many men, being a strong man doesn't come naturally, but a woman expects a man to know how to be a man in a relationship. And if he doesn't know, she becomes frustrated with him because she really expects him to know. It reminded me of a song by Amy Winehouse called Stronger Than Me. She says, you should be stronger than me. You've been here 7 years longer than me. Don't you know you're supposed to be the man? That's the point. We're supposed to know we're supposed to be the man and what she wants in a man. And a lot of men think they're doing the right thing and can't understand why it's not working. Divorced men have told me that if they had learned these insights that I'm going to discuss while they were married, they probably wouldn't be divorced. I've heard this lots of times. And they can't understand why during all the years they were married, like some were married 30 years. He said, nobody ever taught them this. Another thing I learned that surprised me was what I heard from women. I used to tell men, read the book, don't show it to your wife, just do it. Things will be better. Instead, I found out it's the women who buy the book and give it to their husbands, boyfriends, and sons and tell them to read it. A woman commented to me, if my husband of 38 years had understood these basic but crucial truths, our marriage would not have disintegrated. I was also surprised to realize this wasn't only relevant to men in North America, which is what I had thought. When the book was translated into 24 languages in places like Brazil, where you think the whole image of a macho man originated, and in Japan, where you think every man has a geisha, and in Russia, Romania, Poland, China, and Thailand, where you think men know how to be men, I realized that while cultures may be different, human nature is similar. As King Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun. Thousands of years ago, men faced challenges similar to those faced by men today. And it started with the first man who was in a relationship, Adam. Adam was alone. He wanted a wife, and he asked God for a wife. And God created Eve to be, in Hebrew, Ezer Kenegdo, which is translated to mean a helper opposing him or a helper against him. I thought, a helper against him? What in the world does that mean? So I looked at the commentary and the regular Chumash, and Rashi quotes the Talmud, Yevamah 63a, which says, if the man is worthy, the woman will be his helper. If he's not worthy, she will be against him. When I read this, I was blown away. Here I had read all these books that said virtually nothing to me. And these two sentences, to me, they said everything. If a man works on himself to be worthy, his wife will be his partner. And if he doesn't, she will be against him. And it's interesting that the Talmud doesn't say if the man is not worthy, the woman won't be his helper, which would be the opposite of being his helper. No, excuse me, it says she will be against him. So the question is, what should a man do so that his wife will feel he is worthy of her love and respect? And what can a woman do to inspire a man to be that kind of man? That is the goal of this presentation. 1 point for the men, don't tell your wife that you can't change until she starts doing the suggestions for women on how to inspire your husband. It only takes one person to take the lead. That's your job. For the men, some of these ideas I'm going to discuss may be different than what you're used to hearing. I ask that you approach them with an open mind. As one reader commented on Amazon, if you're uncomfortable with some of these ideas, it may be a good sign. Lesson number 1, show leadership. A woman commented on an article I wrote about this for H.com. My husband will remain silent, waiting for me to tell him what the problem is and what he should do next, or he just hopes the problem will go away. It infuriates me that he waits and expects me to make all the decisions. Whatever I want is fine with him. If I step forward, he steps forward. If I step back, he steps back. If I remain in one spot, he does also. I want him to be a leader. I don't want to have to lead him. His lack of taking charge as the man of the house infuriates me. I want him to think, decide, and act on his own. I want him to take charge of our home, and I will be a better partner to him. I bet this man doesn't understand why his wife is unhappy. After all, he's doing whatever she wants. And this is what men think. If I just do whatever she wants, she should be happy, but she's not. Anyone remember Dr. Spock? I don't mean Mr. Spock, the Vulcan on Star Trek. I mean Dr. Benjamin Spock, whose book on parenting was one of the best-selling books of the 20th century. It sold 50 million copies and was translated into 39 languages. In his subsequent book, Dr. Spock on Parenting, he wrote, if a man wants to have a good relationship with his wife and be a good father to his children, he has to be a leader and a role model. When I read this, I realized I wasn't a leader. When I now tell men the importance of showing their share of leadership, I get a variety of responses, and here are 6 of them. 1, a lot say they've never heard it before. 2, some say they thought it's enough to bring in the money and leave running everything to the wife. But as Shimshon Raphael Hirsch wrote, a man will have grief and misery if he thinks providing money and a house is enough to make him a true father of a family. 3, some men avoid taking the lead because they don't want to be accused of being controlling. They don't realize that it's not being controlling when you take responsibility for dealing with a problem and stop leaving it all to your wife. 4, some avoid showing any leadership because they're not sure what to do and don't want to be blamed if they make a mistake. So they leave it to their wives to handle or wait for their wives to tell them what to do, and they think they're being nice guys. But they'll admit that it's easier to avoid taking the lead and think you're being a non-controlling good guy. But as women have told me, when a woman always has to tell a man what to do, it makes her feel like he is a child and she is his mother. She does not want to be his mother. It can also make her feel like she's a married single parent. A 2011 survey by ForbesWomen.com said approximately 25% of married mothers said they sometimes feel like married single mothers. A lot of men don't realize that when a man always wants to be told what to do, he is more like a mother's helper than a father and a husband. Number 5, some men say they work hard at their jobs and come home too exhausted to show leadership to deal with problems at home. I tell them, just as you work hard at your job to provide a nice life for your family, you need to save some energy to show your share of leadership at home for the same reason, to provide a nice life for your family. And 6, some men say they leave everything to their wives because they think their wives know more about these things. So I tell them, if you're not sure what to do, Google it. Go to the library and find a book on it, or consult a professional who has expertise on it. One man commented, when my wife fell out of love with me and complained I wasn't showing any leadership, I was confused. I had no idea what she meant. So this is what I tell men about showing leadership, showing their share of leadership. 1, know what's going on in your home. 2, look for situations that need to be dealt with that are not being dealt with. If your wife is already dealing with it, don't undermine her. Don't think, I'll show her I'm the leader. We're going to do the complete opposite. That's just stupid. 3, find a solution and then decide, is it something to discuss with your wife and get her input, or is it something she'd rather you handle on your own? 4, if you want your wife's input, communicate to her in the way she needs to be communicated to. It's not, what do I feel like saying? It's, what does she need to hear so she will support what I want to do? 5, then deal with it. And 6, just keep doing this over and over. The most important thing to remember is she wants you to take the lead and be a good, confident leader because it makes her feel safe and protected. As one woman said to me, I may be a boss at work, but when I'm with a man, I want to feel like a woman. I want him to take charge. I was once interviewed on a talk radio show in Boston. As I discussed the ideas of my book with the male host, he kept making these snide comments. I thought, okay, this is talk radio. He wants to be provocative. Then he said, Elliott, I disagree with you. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to ask only women to call in and see if they agree with you or they agree with me, and we'll keep score. Are you ready to defend yourself? I said I was. Later, I realized that he expected women to call in and call me all kinds of not nice things. And this would be lively talk radio. But the opposite actually happened. The first woman called in. She said how frustrated she was with her husband, who wouldn't show any leadership at all. The host was surprised and he said, so you agree with Elliott? He says, yes, I agree with him. He says, well, that's 1 for you, 0 for me. The next one called in and said, I don't know what you guys are talking about. All the men in my family take charge. The host says, sounds like you agree with Elliott. She says, yes, I do. Well, it's 2 for you and 0 for me. Next caller says how fed up she is with her husband because he won't make any decisions. The host says, okay, it's 3 for you, 0 for me. At that point, he stopped keeping score. And by the end, the host admitted he was surprised. But interestingly, it took the women who phoned in to teach him something he hadn't ever learned. So if you're a woman who wants to inspire your husband to take charge more, here are some strategies. First, understand he really probably doesn't know how important this is. So once you realize that, you realize you're helping him learn. Then choose a situation that you would like him to take the lead on and say it would be a big help to you and it would make you happy if he would take charge of dealing with it. You could add, I like it when a man takes charge. I think it's manly. Or just like you take charge of dealing with problems at work, it would make me happy if you would do the same thing here. Lesson number 2, make decisions. A woman wrote, I'm so bored and frustrated with this man. He won't make any decisions or plans or take responsibility for anything. At our home, I am the one who wears the pants and I hate it. I don't want to be the one who makes all the decisions. It's exhausting. I just want someone strong for me who I can rely on. So reading this inspired me to call my second book, How to Get Your Man to Wear the Pants. Here's another story. A wife calls her husband at work and asks, what would you like for supper, chicken or fish? He thinks, why is she calling me? I'm so busy. And he says, whatever you make will be good. He also thinks he's playing it safe and can't be blamed for a bad decision. This is how men think, believe me. A man asked me why his wife asks him to make decisions that don't really matter to him. I told him it's because she wants your input. So give her your input. Do not say whatever you want, you decide. After he started doing this, his wife told him it makes her feel safe and protected. It can be hard to make decisions. You may make a mistake. It's easier to avoid it, but you have to push yourself to do it. And the Talmud teaches us why. In 2 of the Jewish books on marriage that I read, there was a quote from the Talmud which says, if your wife is short, bend down and seek her advice. In other words, make an effort to listen to what she has to say. I thought that's interesting. What else does it say? So I went to the page in the Talmud, Baba Metzia 59a, and that statement is actually a response to an earlier statement which says, if you always automatically follow your wife's advice, your life will descend to Gehenna. Your life will be hell. And then it says, but don't they say if your wife is short, bend down and seek her advice? The message is balanced. If you never listen to your wife, make an effort to listen to her. But if you always just do whatever she says, that's not good either. She doesn't want a controlling tyrant, but she also doesn't want someone who always says, whatever you want, you decide. Just banish those words from your vocabulary. It doesn't make her feel safe and protected. And and it bothers me when I hear a man joke that his wife tells him, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. He says it as a joke, but as we all know, there is often truth in a joke. And as the Talmud in Beitzah 32b says, a man who is ruled by his wife, his life is not a life. It is as if he is not alive. The irony is, it's also not a life for his wife. She finds it hard to respect a man who won't make decisions and lets himself be ruled by his wife. Avoiding decisions can often start on the first date. A man calls a woman and says, would you like to go out Saturday night? She says, yes, what did you have in mind? He says, I don't know. I have to tell you, I speak at singles events sometimes, and I'll ask that question. How many women here have had that experience? Like most women put up their hand. I couldn't count the number of women who tell me about men who ask them out and then can't even choose a place for a cup of coffee. He wants her to decide. It makes her wonder how he would make any decisions and handle the challenges of marriage and family life. But the man thinks he's showing her that he's not controlling. Cosmopolitan magazine's website advises women that if your date wants you to decide everything about getting together, it may mean you should be prepared to make every decision in the relationship. A few years ago, I was dating a woman who said to me, you date well. What are you doing? I thought she was making fun of me. So I said, are you making fun of me? She said, no, you're a good dater. What are you doing? I said, I'll tell you what I'm doing. Do you notice that whenever I ask you out, I'm a man with a plan? If after I suggest a plan, you have a better idea, I'm open to it and we can do it. But I never come empty-handed. I don't say, I don't know. What do you want to do? So when your wife calls and asks for your input on a decision, give her your input. If the decision doesn't matter to you, then it's an easy decision. Tell her what you think. Remember, you're doing it to make her happy. And if you're a woman who is tired of a man always saying whatever you want, here are some strategies. Say, what I want is to know what you want. I like a man who knows what he wants. It would make me happy if you gave me your input. If a man asks you out on a date and doesn't have a plan to suggest, say, I don't have any ideas. Would you be able to come up with a plan? And let him come up with a plan. Lesson number 3, take responsibility. When I first separated, I got together with a friend who had also just separated. At that time, I thought my situation was unique in the world. But when I talked to this friend, I couldn't believe that our situations were so similar, we could finish each other's sentences. And as we wallowed in our mutual victimhood, he said something that shocked me. He said his wife had run up $50,000 on the credit cards. I said, how could you let that go on? You have children. That was another moment that changed my thinking. I had to ask myself, how could I let go on what I did let go on? I realized it's always easier to blame, but a man doesn't avoid responsibility by blaming his wife. He is still responsible. And this situation is as old as time itself. Who was the first man to blame his wife for something that went wrong? The first man, Adam. Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. They have one commandment. Don't eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge. What happens? Eve eats it, then she tries to get Adam to eat it. And there's a story that says first she squeezed it into juice to try to trick him, but he says no. Then she argues with him, and he still says no. Then she screams at him until he can't take it anymore, and he gives in, and he eats the fruit. And then what happens? Adam is hiding in the bushes, and God asks him, Adam, did you eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge that I commanded you not to eat? What does Adam say? Does he take responsibility for what he did? No, just the opposite. He says, the woman you sent me gave it to me, and I ate it. I couldn't believe it. He gave in to something he knew was wrong, and then he blamed his wife. I thought only men today did that, and I admit it, I did it too. But what happened to Adam? Does blaming his wife let Adam avoid responsibility? Does God say to Adam, you poor thing, you're a victim, you're not responsible, you're a victim of your wife? Not at all. Adam is punished for eating the fruit and for not using his judgment. The key lesson, if you know it's wrong, you do your best not to let it happen. And if it happens, don't think you'll avoid responsibility by blaming your wife. And as Adam learned, there's little sympathy for a man who thinks he can avoid responsibility by blaming his wife. A man's responsibility is to make his wife feel safe and protected. And when a husband blames his wife, he is shirking that responsibility. If you're a woman who wants to motivate your husband to take more responsibility at home, here are some strategies. If he always asks you what he should do or waits for you to tell him what to do, you could say, I appreciate all that you do. It would also make me happy if you would help by taking charge of dealing with problems that come up. Here's a common situation I've seen lots of times. A man has children from a previous marriage who are disrespectful to his new partner, and he is afraid to discipline them because he fears they won't visit him. He blames his ex-wife. Tell him if he wants his children to succeed in life, he needs to teach them to be respectful to you and to everyone else. Lesson number 4, avoid financial stress. Financial stress is a common cause of divorce. The Talmud, Bava Metzia 59a, teaches that financial stress can bring out or worsen problems in a marriage that would not have otherwise have arisen. The Talmud also advises to avoid investments that can cause financial stress in the short term, even if in the long term, the investment may be profitable. In other words, it's not worth risking your relationship. When I coach men, they often say they are in financially stressful situations and how this stress has made things worse in their marriage. I've also coached men who thought the way to help their floundering relationship was a bigger house, expensive renovations, or luxurious gifts. They thought it would help regain their partner's love and respect. They learned the hard way that spending large amounts of money didn't help their relationship. In some cases, it led to financial stress that made things worse. They realized that not having a big house, expensive renovations, and other luxuries was not the cause of the problems in their relationship. They also learned that if they can't afford something, they have to say no for the sake of protecting their marriage and their family. In the Talmud, Shabbos 25b, Rabbi Akiva says, a man who wants to be wealthy to buy luxuries for his wife will never be wealthy because his wife will never be satisfied. He also said, who is truly rich? A man married to a wife whose ways are pleasant, who doesn't demand a lot of material things, and who along with her husband, appreciates what they have. If you're thinking of taking on financial stress to do something that you think will lead to a happier relationship with your spouse, think again. For women, if your husband wants to do something that could lead to financial stress, ask him, have you considered how this will affect our relationship? Financial stress can lead to breakups. It's not worth the risk. Lesson number 5, control your anger. I used to hear that it's healthy to express anger and it's not healthy to keep it bottled up. Was sort of thinking of what you heard in the media, but it's really the opposite. When you see someone yelling out of control, you respect him. I think he looks crazy. Anger can do a lot of damage to a relationship. Your wife won't forget the hurtful things you said, and if you blow up at her, she may just blow you off. Being strong is not about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself. And as we learn in Ethics of the Fathers 4.1, Ben Zoma said, who is strong? He who controls his impulses. Someone who can control his anger is stronger than a physically strong man who can conquer a city. Dr. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who was in Auschwitz, wrote in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, that even in Auschwitz, a person can choose how he responded to a situation. Some people responded like saints, others like the worst possible swine. So here are 3 techniques I learned to control anger. 1, when people get angry, it's often because they don't know how to handle the situation calmly. So think of situations that happened in the past that led to loud arguments and could happen again. Plan how to calmly handle them in a way that resolves the issue. 2, try to delay dealing with the situation until you cool off and can think clearly. And 3, and this is they're all good, but this one I love. You're about to get angry. Imagine your cell phone is ringing and it's your boss who wants to talk to you about doubling your salary, but he can only talk to you right then. You'd cool off pretty fast. Lesson number 6, be manly. In Ethics of the Fathers 2.6, Hillel says, in a place where there are no men, strive to be a man. He's telling men to strive to develop positive manly qualities. Manliness is actually a virtue. The Webster's Dictionary says that one of the original meanings of the word virtue is manly strength. It also defines manly as the noble, admirable qualities of a man of mature character, such as decisiveness, strength in one's convictions, confidence, self-reliance, high moral qualities, self-discipline, honesty, integrity, and courage. While women also have these positive traits, they want men to have them to feel safe and protected by a man who is worthy of their love and respect. And lesson number 7, share your life lessons with your children. The first time I said Yizkor for my father and said, my father, my teacher, I realized teacher really encompasses what a father should be: a leader, a guide, a mentor, a role model, and someone who shares his life lessons. To a daughter, her father is the first man in her life. She watches him to learn about men. He can influence the kind of man she will choose by being that kind of man. To a son, a father is a role model of a man. He shows him how a man relates to other men and how a man treats women, including his wife. When my father died, there were many things about his life I wish I had talked to him about. I soon realized I wasn't the only one who missed knowing more about his father. Two American presidents actually wrote about this. Bill Clinton's mother was pregnant with him when his father died in a car accident at age 28. In his autobiography, Clinton wrote, "All my life, I have been hungry to fill in the blanks, clinging eagerly to every photo or story or scrap of paper that would tell me more about the man who gave me life." President Barack Obama, his father left his family when Obama was 2 years old. When Obama was 21, his father died, also in a car accident. When Obama was in his 30s, he wrote a book called Dreams from My Father, in which he said, "What has found its way onto these pages is a record of a personal interior journey, a boy's search for his father, and through that search, a workable meaning for his life." I don't watch much TV, but one day I found myself watching a reality TV show. There was a single mother, her 24-year-old daughter, and a husband and his wife. The single mother said the other woman's husband was the father of her daughter. The man said he wasn't. To make it lively, there was a lot of screaming. The climax of the show was a DNA report that would determine whether the man was the girl's father. At one point, the host asked the husband, "If the DNA test says you're the father, what will you do?" He said, "Then I will be her father, but not on television." I thought that was a responsible answer. The climax of the show came, and the DNA report said that he was not the father. The daughter started to cry. The host asked her, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Because I want to know my father." Excuse me. For women, encourage your husband to share his life lessons with your children. What you teach them will last a lifetime. In the song by Amy Winehouse that I quoted from earlier, she also said, "Why do you always put me in control? All I need is for my man to live up to his role." So here are the key points for a man to live up to his role. Working on developing these traits to become the strong man a woman wants can mean catching ourselves when we want to step back into our old habits. But the more we push ourselves, the more these traits become second nature. One, show your share of leadership. Look for situations that need to be dealt with. Two, make your share of decisions, even if the decision doesn't matter to you. Three, take responsibility. As Adam learned, don't blame your wife. Four, avoid financial stress. It can bring out or worsen problems in your marriage. Five, control your anger. Angry outbursts can destroy your relationship. Six, be manly. Develop the noble qualities of a man of mature character. And seven, share your life lessons with your children. If you don't, they'll hunger for it. To the women, when your husband does the actions that show he is developing these traits, tell him how much you appreciate him and how he's making you happy. Here's what a woman commented on these key points. "Wish I could have read and given this to my ex-husband before I filed for divorce. Maybe it would have saved our marriage. Our whole marriage, I longed for him to be a man. However, it never came for us. Over and over, I screamed these same topics. Take responsibility, show leadership, make decisions, be strong, and be manly. Well, now that I'm in the dating game again and asking God to send me a husband, I can weed out many unsuitable men after reading this and knowing what a strong man should look like." The sad thing is that her husband probably thought he was a good guy and couldn't understand why she didn't appreciate him. I encourage men to try it and women to encourage their men to try it, see the difference it makes. If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I actually just put into the chat for everyone the titles of the two books and that they're available on Amazon so that you know, I also want to ask the question, which actually has been, I read these books from cover to cover, and so that, and I think I read them twice. In terms of the strategies that men would take into account, it seems like that the emphasis on leadership is something that, again, you need to discuss early on. One of the things that in our nonprofit that we focus on is premarital education. And so that it can't be too early during engagement and newlyweds to really take these, topics and give them full exploration. What do you think, Elliott, as to the appropriate time and to have these conversations?
Well, anytime is the appropriate time, but I agree with you. Like before people get married, marriage education is very important. They should really, because really so many times people get married and they get divorced, they realize they haven't really, the husband didn't know how to be a husband, the wife there are things the wife got to learn. It doesn't come naturally. We need to learn. And if we do it before getting married, and I think as we discussed, it would be a great idea if, you know, rabbis who do marriages said, okay, well, you need to learn, you need to be part of a marriage education course before I can marry you. And that would I would think that would help so many people, so many marriages, because there's so many divorces you see. I see so many, and they're good people. It's not like, in the old days, who got divorced? Like the husband was a drunk, he was a gambler, he was a womanizer. That's who got divorced. But nowadays, there's so many divorces. Both these people are good people. Why are they getting divorced? Like, and if they could get some education on how not, how they need to have a marriage. A man has to be a husband, a woman has to be wife. That'd be so helpful. And it hurts me, especially, when there's children involved. Like it's so common today that people with children, get divorced and these children from a broken home. And it's so sad for the children. It seems to become acceptable. It's like, 50 years ago, people didn't if they had children, they didn't get divorced. They said, well, we'll stay together for the children. But you don't just stay together for the children, but stay together and learn what you needed to learn to have, an effective marriage. I mean, a loving, respectful marriage. So the earlier, the better.
Absolutely. And on that same kind of the flip side of kind of how abuse can happen from a man who wants to make all the decisions, is a little too controlling, it doesn't show his wife that, that decisions are important, kind of starts, are there red flags that you would say that, where leadership becomes kind of blurred into the abuse category?
Right, of course, of course. I mean, most of the men I deal with are on the other end. They just nice guys who just think if they just do whatever their wives want, they'll be happy. But at the other extreme, someone who's abusive and controlling, he has to learn to control himself. Or really, married, you can't stay married to someone who's abusive or violent. But if you're strong and stand up for yourself and make it clear, hey, these are boundaries and don't cross them. Um, or like if you take a pre-marriage education course and you see these red flags and you think, oh well, if we get married, things will be better. Like, maybe hold off and think about this. It's we talked about in the Catholic Church, there's a requirement to have a marriage education course with the church before they can get married. And it seems to me, as Jews, we should be thinking like, why don't we do that? We have so much wisdom in our holy books, and I mean the Chumash and the Talmud, and so many wise men. Like, we should be teaching this to people before they get married, and so they make the right decisions. It's long
Absolutely.
overdue.
We have a question actually that I want to read out to you. It says, I think this was a great webinar and I agree 100% with your main points. Number one, men are interested in strong men. Two, men are confused in their role in the relationship and what women want. So would you say that was this more a man, or more for the man to hear or more for the woman to hear in this question?
Well, I mean, my focus has been men because I feel as a man I could share. When I talk to men, I say, let's go for a coffee. Let me share with you what I learned. So, men are confused, and because they hear so many, like what we hear in the media, all these things, we're really not sure what to do. So we just play it safe and don't do anything. I mean, we just think, well, just agree with everything she wants and she should be happy. Um, we, I guess my focus has been men because, this has been my journey. And I think women should be coaching women who have made a similar journey. And yeah, no, it really, it's time to share. People who have made this journey, learned what they needed to learn, should be sharing it with people. And like I say, in a marriage education program, that would be so wonderful because you could really avoid so many horrible divorces. I just, you know, I was in touch with a retired family court judge on another project. And the way he described this experience, like being a judge and hearing all the stuff that goes on in court, I don't know how he survived. But but we have to, we could educate people before they get married on what their responsibility and you know, how to be a spouse. We could really change the world and make it.
Can I flip that question? Actually, the person who asked the question kind of intended it for the women are interested in strong men and women are confused. So I want to correct that with the connotation. But look at from the other side, those that have been married, let's say 30 years, 25 years, and kind of, set in their ways. How do you essentially advise these people to kind of think out of the big box and start assuming these roles? Or is it kind of, hard to kind of break into that group? Is there a group that, is not as receptive, or anybody could be?
Right, right. So I can tell I've coached people that were married 30 years. And, so if it's working, if your roles, if you're married and you're happy and it's working for you, well, that's great. I'm not telling people, do it my way, do it this way. If you're happy, that's great. But if you're having problems and like you realize, you know, I was coaching one man, he's married 30 years. I told him, I say, gee, no one ever told me this before. And his marriage was really going down the tubes. I said, this is what you got to do. And things got better. And unfortunately, I did get divorced, but I mean, things were better. And in his new relationship, he's been with a partner for quite a few years now. It's so much better. It's so much better. She says to him, "You make me feel safe and protected." It's so. I mean sometimes a person like the problem with men, the problem with men is that they don't really wake up. They just think, well, things are okay. They're sort of in a rut. And it's only when the wife says to them, oh, I want a divorce, that he sort of wakes up and realizes, well, I need help. I need help. And so sometimes, and I've had that feedback, I helped them or the book helped them and they say, oh, you saved my marriage. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. Sometimes it's too little, too late, but it does help them in a new relationship. That is the feedback I've gotten. Yeah. So for men think just start early before you get married or when you get married, like start learning what a man has to be. Because see, women, I think, are very focused on relationships. Men think, I'll go out and earn a living. That should be enough. But your question was that women are confused. I think there's, strategies for women as well. Um, but my focus just is I share with people my own journey, and I've been focusing on men.
Um, Also, someone asked, and I assume that this information would be relevant to everyone, is that you're available to speak at an event, and do you
Oh,
have
sure.
a YouTube channel? So I'm just putting that little plug out there. That's the question that was asked.
Okay. Actually, I'm just starting. I'm just going to start a YouTube channel. That's one of my next projects. But if people want me to speak to their group, I'd be happy to. Or people just want to contact me with questions about their own situation or questions about they could email me. I'll give you my email. It's ELLIOTTR
Okay, great.
KATZ
You know what,
At
we're gonna, we'll
you're
put
gonna
that,
post it?
yeah, now
Okay.
what is the, tell me your email again?
ELLIOTTRKATZ or Z if you're in the United States at AOL.com. And I'd be happy to talk to people. You know, we could talk on the phone or
Okay,
on Zoom.
great, got that. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? Just, I, I, I found these books to be the most relevant because they're so against the tide. You know, and so therefore, if you don't really take these, so that's why I advise people buy the books, put them on your living room table there, so that even if you have guests come over, that they'll sit there and say, "Oh, I see, there's an interesting book there," and it'll stimulate conversation. And that's really what this is all about: is trying to reverse the culture of what really is conventional wisdom. And I think that the time has really come, that there's just too much conflict and too many avoidable arguments. And I think that that's one of the things why I was so delighted to connect with Elliott, because it was like finding my own soulmate to get these messages across. And it's not, I mean, unfortunately, again, it goes back to therapy too, that, you know, you don't want to get a situation, too many marriages go to divorce, people, statistics, they don't even get to the therapist. And so therefore it's like trying to build a bridge. And if you can build a foundation and at least try to intervals, do temperature checks on your relationships along the way. That's why we encourage date nights too, but don't bring up these topics in a date night, but make sure that you build in time to really communicate, do temperature checking with your relationship. And these points that Elliott raises are just great conversation pieces to, you know, to take into account. And so that I am more than honored that to connect with you, because I think that more than anything else, I think that at this particular stage and so many issues going on, that if we don't keep focusing on the home and try to preserve the safety, because you mentioned safety as one of those issues that keeps coming up, and marriage education is really almost built on safety concept. And so that if we don't feel safe in our home for whatever reason, then you know, it's just going to exponentially become a societal trauma, and we have enough trauma going on that we don't need to add more elements. So that's why I think that this is timely and appropriate. And which leads me also, so I'm so grateful that you're taking this time out, and the people that have come to listen, which leads to our next topic, which is from our nonprofit. We're going to put out a survey in the next a couple of days, and we are soliciting ideas. We're here to provide great events, content, resources. We want to enrich marriages, but we want to hear from you what you're interested in. And so that when we send it out, it's only 3 minutes. We would appreciate if you'll take the time, because your wish is our command. And it's something that there's so many different stages and so many different, that's why this topic of that you've introduced, Elliott, is across the board. And we want to reach out on those different stages. And we know the interest of the newlywed is not the engaged even, or the newlywed or the expecting, so that we cover the gamut. And so we'd like to hear from you, which is why we are also very active on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, where we have an unbelievable website with lots of blogs and information. And also we do have a YouTube channel with a number of videos. And so that the main thing is that we want to, quote, solicit partners, also partners not in the sense of necessary monetary, but partners in the sense of people that can take the message of marriage education, marriage enrichment, coaching, and recognize it is a societal obligation, whether it's across the board from the couple side, the advocates for the couple, but also more from a cultural side. We have an obligation as a society to make marriage the premium institution that is our legacy. And if we don't treat it with respect and dignity, then essentially we as a society has failed. So that we ask you to just spend the 3 minutes to answering the survey and get back to us, because we want to hear from you, and in more ways than one, on our social media. But most of all, we want to express our expression. Elliott, we want, if you could just spend 2 minutes summing up the message you want as the ultimate takeaway from this group, the floor is yours.
Well, I guess the ultimate message that I would say it's really important. These skills just don't come, naturally to many men, and it's really important to take the time to learn them and learn, like you say, learn them as early as you can. Learn them today. It's so many things. Like I said, so many men have said to me, "No one ever taught me this. No one ever told me this. How come no one ever taught me this?" So to make the effort to learn it, marriage is something we have to learn how to be married. That's really the message. We have to learn how to be married. Men and women both have to learn how to be married. And if you learn how to be married in the right way, you can have a lasting marriage, a loving and respectful marriage for many, many, many years. And that's what I wish upon everybody who's listening here today.
And I want to wish a Chodesh Tov to everyone who's here, and that we're entering into the happy seasons of the Jewish calendar, and so that it's a perfect opportunity to celebrate your relationships, and we can't underscore that enough. So think out of the box. What can you do for your respective spouse? And as he said, Rabbi Dessler, you love the one you give to. So make a point to be loving partners, and thank you. Thank you for giving us your time and your attention. So
thank you for having, it's an honor to be here. You're doing great things, and I'm really glad we connected. What you're doing is so important.
Well, thank you. It always takes people like you, the talented, and people in the audience to care. So spread the message and buy the books, and let us hear from you. So, and we wish everyone again a good month, and happy families, and make sure you cherish one another. That's the main key, the main takeaway from my standpoint. So wishing everyone, we try to keep to the time frame, and so if anyone else has any quick other last minute thoughts or question, we got another minute to and I guess the main thing takeaway is think about what can you do? What can you do? What is that one thing you can do for your relationship that's going to really tell the other person how treasured and how valuable they are to you? And so that's your takeaway assignment. Just the one thing you can do. And we'll all celebrate